Going down. Going down. Oh my. Oh my. Oh. Alrighty. Good morning. Really enjoy the first part of the stream when nobody is here. And I'm just like talking to myself. Because of the obvious delay. Between things. Alright. But, yeah. Ends. Oh, what a... we should update it on its own. Redundant. Oh, you go away. Alright. Waiting for folks to start the morning. Top of the morning to you all. Top of the morning looking down on creation and good morning, everyone. Lots of here. Good morning. It's a glorious morning. Oops. Ta-ta-ta-ta. I've heard this song before. Not according to plan. Approaching Nirvana. I like it. Oh, I missed somebody. Go. Woo! Whip. I'm already sweating. Goodness. All right. Oh. Good morning, everyone. Woo! All right. So, lots of folks are here. So today is our topic is prejudice, as we've been, talking about for the last few days. And so I really, just like yesterday, request that chat is active and participating. I know there's a delay with things, and so, whenever I say, like, hey, chat, what do you think about this? That's your cue to start typing away. Excuse me. That's your tippity tappy. So get those typing fingers ready, because we've got a lot of important topics to talk about. So I am gonna bring up current events, obviously. I am going to show quite a few videos, actually, because they're better than me. And I say that for two reasons. One, this is not my area of expertise. I mean, social psychology isn't either. Social cognition, potentially, but definitely not SPD, stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. So, and then the second reason is I am a white man. Okay, I'm a white cishet man. So what I have to say about all of these things from a member of those groups means very little in the grand scheme of things. So I will provide the guidance on science, but I would like all the rest of you to chime in. Okay. I'm trying to crack my knee and it won't crack and it hurts. Okay, great. So those are the two reasons why I'm gonna let lots of other voices speak on these issues, rather than like me telling you my opinion, because my opinion isn't worth much. So I'll let you know when something is my opinion, just like yesterday. But yeah, I'm not going to be waxing poetic on this stuff because, yeah, these are important conversations, and I'm not here to. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be indoctrinating you all. According to very conservative voices, I'm supposed to be indoctrinating you as a college professor into a liberal mold to go out and be just a liberal and automaton. I apologize. I need to do that. No, I'm joking, of course, because if I was any good at indoctrinating anyone, if I was any good at that, my kids would listen to me, and they don't. So why are other people's kids gonna listen to me? I mean, come on. No. That's just not how it works. Good stuff. Okay. So, couple of, I ran through the questions this morning. A lot of similar questions about prejudice. Oh my goodness, I have something in my throat. Sorry. A lot of similar questions on prejudice and it basically the underpinning of it all, like where does it come from? What's the deal? You know, Jerry Seinfeld, what's the deal with prejudice? I hope you enjoyed that one. I used to be better at it, but so like, is it learned? Where does it come from? And all that stuff. So we'll get to that. I found some resources regarding that. I do want to share with you all the a Hidden Brain episode. Hidden Brain is a podcast from NPR, hosted by Shankar Vedantam. It is a re-upping of Implicit Bias that was released last month. About, you know, like, where does implicit bias come from and all of that. I also have a word game on implicit bias that we're all going to play. But because the topic of race, the topic of religion, the topic of sexual orientation and gender in the United States is so very political, we are going to start with a video about, this is from Berkeley, UC Berkeley's Greater Good Lab, their Greater Good magazine, so greatergood.berkeley.edu, about how to shift from hostility to empathy in political conversations. And the reason why I want to play this is because you have to, if you want to have a discussion with somebody, you have to meet them at a certain point. And I'm always going to advocate for more empathy in this world. I'm always going to do that. That's a personal thing for me, and I'm going to always advocate for more empathy and for more compassion. And so I don't want to get into like shouting matches with people from a personal standpoint. And I hope that you don't either, that you don't want to just run to the nearest social media and just be a faceless troll, because words do have impact, right? Now, I understand that this potentially is not the route that some people want to take, and that's fine too. This is based on the questions and based on my searching. That's what I looked for. So let's switch to that. And again, chat needs to be very active today. Chat needs to be the discussion guider. Okay. All right. I'm gonna pause the music because there are lyrics in it, and
The canvasser. Meet Rima. You've seen canvassers like her in your neighborhood. They work for a social or political cause, and they want you to agree with them. Here's how you've seen it. Hi, I'm Rima. Have you heard of Election Holiday America? Here are 5 facts about why you should support making Election Day a federal holiday, so it's not biased against working people. What's not working here? Well, Rima is trying to appeal to them based on her logic, instead of what they believe. Hey Rima, let's try something different. Instead of telling them what you value, let's try appealing to what they value. Hi, I'm Rima, and I'm a volunteer with Election Holiday America. I'd love to hear what you think are the most important American values. I agree that liberty is an important American value. Working Americans face a threat to their liberty on Election Day. It's hard for them to take a day off or wait in delayed lines, so they can't exercise their right to vote. So, why did that work so differently for Rima? In the second round, she used a technique called moral reframing. She tried to understand the value that matters to the other person, liberty, and presented her idea so it made sense based on that value. This helped create mutual understanding. Let's watch again. 1. She reframed her political argument. And 2. She talked about an issue based on what they value, not based on what she values. And it's not limited to politics. You can use moral reframing to bridge differences in all kinds of situations, like Thanksgiving dinner, office meetings, with a partner. Conversations can be more open-minded if we reframe and consider what the other side values. You don't need to agree with their views. You just need to understand where they're coming from. And if you do, they'll be more receptive to what you have to say, allowing for deeper understanding between people.
all right, thoughts on that as the video ends here. Trying to catch the little bit of delay here. Thoughts on that? Very long. Not very long. It got us started, right? Right? What do we think? Back on. Hey, Leah. You'll try that in the future. Okay. Very nice. Very good. I like seeing that. She was smart for talking about like that. If AJ, yeah, it is a lot more difficult to do that in person, and the moment yeah, it's very difficult to get heated, to not get heated, sorry. To not get heated. But so just like with anything, it's a skill that is possible to cultivate, to learn a little bit more, right? And so then it becomes easier in the moment to do that. It becomes easier in the moment. But it is a skill that, you know, a canvasser really needs to adopt sometimes. And the more they do that, the better at it they get. And especially if they know the neighborhood that they're in and who are the people in that neighborhood, they can have a little bit better time. So it, just like with anything, it comes to practice, right? Yeah. Grayson, I thought it was useful in the sense of getting people to sign a petition. How this reframing helps the hard conversations. It's a good point, Grayson. It's not gonna 100% help hard conversations. Like I said at the beginning, it's a way to bridge a divide. Okay, because if you're talking to somebody about a hard conversation like racism, like we're talking about today, you still want to know the position that they're coming from, and understanding that is going to put you at an advantage if they're unwilling to do that. Okay, it's just like, well, you know, I'm trying to understand your position, and I understand it, but if you don't want to see my side of it, then, you know, then I don't think we're ever going to reach never gonna reach an understanding. I think the point of this piece is to reach an understanding, to understand who you're talking to a little bit better. Okay, but again, it's not a cure-all. Nothing is a panacea. Nothing is a panacea. Okay, I'll just put that out there. And I understand where many of you are coming from with that one, but you have to engage with a person first to understand them a little bit better. If you don't understand the person first, you're probably not going to make headway. People really like to be understood. And that is scientifically backed up too. We really like it when people you know, flatter us, when they praise us, when they listen to us, when we feel like we are the focus of attention. We really like that. We really like that. So if you can play that to your advantage in a discussion, then perhaps you could get somebody on your side, or at least explain to them where you are coming from. Okay. Sophia, it takes skill, you know. It takes a lot of skill. Yeah, as I was saying with AJ, you know. I've never heard of steel manning before, but if it's the opposite of straw man, I can probably gather what it is. All right. The next one that I want to do, close that. The next one that I want to do is, where are you? Is this one about implicit bias. I'm gonna resize this window. All right. This is what I want you to do. Grayson, if you're going to share with us what steel manning is, that'd be pretty cool too. But this is what I'd like you to do as we move toward talking about implicit bias, which is a feature of prejudice that I think the better we understand, the better your conversations will be. So let's try that. Okay. What I want you to do is write a paragraph. So, words from the essay. A student's goal is to make the paragraph cogent, to choose words that make sense in the context. And second, they need to do it alone without discussion. Okay. Grayson, you are not allowed to post the link. So why don't you email me right now and I'll post the link in chat. Okay. So what you're doing on your own right now is filling the blanks here. Filling the blanks here in that paragraph with words that make sense. So it's kind of like a Mad Lib, but it needs to be cogent. So not like a really silly story like all children are capable of pooping. But so don't make it Mad Lib. It needs to be cogent. Okay, all of the blanks need to make sense in the broader paragraph. Let me know if you have any questions, and then the best thing to do is to type this so you can throw it in chat when you're done. Okay. So again, and then that way we can discuss them afterward, which is the rule here. Okay. I don't want to show too much. This was done in a 10th grade class, but it was shared with psych teachers. Oh, my knee just cracked. It was amazing. All right. So, all children are capable of blank, but we cannot expect all students to blank when far too many are blank stairwells with broken handrails and missing steps, tripping and falling as they blank to keep up, while others are blank up on elevators. Hopped up on elevators. Just kidding. Equitable funded schools run by blank educators, buttressed by strong local, state, and national education blank that center the entire context of student lives will be the ones to improve the academic blank of America's most economically blank children. They demand multiple solutions, deep investment, and political blank. Fill those blanks. Ba-ba-dee-ba-doo. Blah-ba-da-ba-doo. Thanks, Grayson. Get that in chat right now. And I will just talk about it while you guys were writing. How about I just talk about it? And they can make their own. But I am going to look at it. Well, that's on the screen. Steelman, how to argue better and be more persuasive. Well, I'll tell you right now. Let's not win. Debates are not about winning. All right. Also, it's the opposite of straw man. Then it's a logical fallacy. So we'll see. Okay. Instead of substituting what someone else is saying with a lousy proposition, we'll do better by reinforcing their basic argument. This is known as the Steelman technique. Put simply, it's building the best form of the other side's argument and then engaging with it, being charitable and patching up weaknesses in the other side's proposition. Okay. It's difficult in practice. Yep. Not perfect. Very good. Ideological Turing test. Yep. Yep. Alright, well. Not bad. Okay. Thanks, Raisin. All children are capable of flying, but we cannot expect all students to fly when far too many eat stairwells with broken handrails and missing steps, tripping and falling as they clamor to keep up, while others are hopped up on elevators. Equitably funded schools run by crappy educators, buttresses by strong local, state, and national educational streamers that center the entire context of student lives will be the ones to improve the academic textbooks of America's most economically fantastical children. They demand multiple solutions, deep investment, and political parties. Super cogent, right? I love it. It's amazing. I did so well. Actually, while you guys are writing this, I'm going to pause that, and I'm going to start this Hidden Brain episode. I'll go back to that. We're not gonna,
Hey there, Shankar here.
we're not going to listen to the whole thing.
Bonus episode. It's a story we reported several years ago. It's about race and bias. On a September evening in 2016, Terrence Crutcher's SUV stopped in the middle of a road in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A woman saw him step out of the car. The doors of the car were open. The engine was still running. The woman called 911. Officer Betty Shelby was on her way to an unrelated incident when the call came in. Terrence was 40, African American, born and raised in Tulsa. He was a church-going man with 4 children. Betty was 42, white, a mother. She was born in a small town not far from Tulsa.
When you're done with your paragraph,
world,
drop it in chat.
These 2 Oklahoma natives, close in age, ought to have had more to bring them together than hold them apart. But on this evening, there was no small talk or friendly chatter. The police officer told Terrence to take his hands out of his pockets. According to her attorney, he first complied. He then put his hands up in the air. Moments later, he put his hands back in his pockets. By this point, multiple police officers had gathered and drawn their guns and tasers. Overhead, a police chopper filmed events as they unfolded. From the video, it's hard to tell exactly what's happening on the ground, but an officer in the helicopter thinks Terrence is not cooperating.
Not for Taser, I think. That looks like a bad dude, too. To be honest with you.
Moments later, one officer on the ground does fire a taser. Betty Shelby fires her gun.
Shots fired! Ooh, 321, we have shots fired. We have 1 suspect down. We need IMSA here.
She kills Terrence Crutcher. Later, police discover that he was unarmed. At a press conference after the shooting, a journalist asked Scott Wood, Betty Shelby's attorney, why she opened fire.
Did him being a big black man play a role in her perceived danger?
No, him being a large man perceived a role in her being in danger. She's worked in this part of town for quite some time. And, you know, just the week before, she was at an all-black high school homecoming football game. She's not afraid of black people.
Terrence Crutcher's sister Tiffany sees it very differently. She thinks the officer shot her brother because he was black.
That big bad dude was my twin brother. That big bad dude was a father. That big bad dude was a son. That big bad dude was enrolled at Tulsa Community College, just wanting to make us proud.
Betty Shelby's daughter, Amber, defended her mother.
I am here to reveal to you the side of my mother that the public does not know. My mother is an incredible, supportive, loving, and caring woman. She is a wife, a mother, and a grandmother with a heart of gold. She has always fought for the underdog and stands up for the weak.
Betty Shelby was acquitted of manslaughter charges. Still, the tenor of the back and forth, the psychological accusations and psychological defenses, is very revealing. When an incident like this occurs, we want to hear the story of what happened. We want to know what was going on in the mind of the shooter and the mind of the victim. Was Terence Crutcher truly a threat? Did Betty Shelby dislike black people? What clues explain the behavior of these individuals? We home in, dig for facts, and look for psychological explanations. But what if there is another way to think about what happened? One that has less to do with the individuals involved.
Anybody have their
and more
paragraphs ready
do
to go?
with the context in which the shooting occurred.
What we're discovering here.
So I wanted to pause on that for a second, just to explain what this episode is about. So as Shankar said, a few years ago they had a story about implicit bias and police bias, right? And so, you know, there was a question, things have gotten so bad, we have a word for mistaking something in a black man's hand as a gun, shooter bias, right? So in this episode of Hidden Brain, which I will link you all to listen fully on your own, because like I said, we're not listening to the whole thing. I just I wanted to bring up the first part, and maybe we'll listen to some more before you know, we all the way. Gonna make sure it clicks. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yes. No. Okay, careful. I wanted to bring up the intro bits because of two stories and then the sound bites from, you know, those actual people who are involved in it, and but it's a rehashing based on current events because it was released again last month. Let's see, June 12th here. Up here. Go back to this in case you're still writing your paragraph. There we go. All right, Sophia, great. I'll come back to those in just a second. So in this particular thing, it's a discussion on implicit bias and who are the researchers in this realm. So there's Mahzarin Banaji, who is one of the co-founders, co-creators of the implicit association test, which I linked to you last week. And it includes some debate as to what the IAT actually measures, and whether or not the IAT is actually measuring implicit behaviors. And then there's just a chat with Josh Carell, who is the originator of the shooter bias paradigm that I explained in the lecture video. and a few other people, and it's a really compact. It's only 30 some minutes, right? It's a really compact discussion on how implicit bias manifests into the behavior. And again, we're talking about bias here. We're talking about bias here that could potentially become a prejudice, a negative emotional valence for an attitude toward a particular person or group of people, right? Just for the fact that they're in that group, right? That's what the prejudice is. And that prejudice could then lead to discriminating behaviors, which we'll talk about in greater length tomorrow, in greater detail tomorrow. And so you have this implicit bias, and even Banaji says herself she's taken the race IAT so many times, and every single time she cannot make the association automatically with black and good. Think about that for a minute. She's taken it so many times. She still cannot make the reaction time for this particular test faster than white good. She cannot make black good faster than white good. It's just it's not possible for her. Okay. And that's even and that's understanding it as this implicit thing explicitly, right? Because we're thinking about it and we're like, okay, well, I have this. Is it actually a thing implicitly? So, yeah. So let's take a look at some of these stories. So Sophia writes, all children are capable of excelling academically, but we cannot expect all students to do so on their own when far too many are struggling on stairwells with broken handrails and missing steps, tripping and falling as they try to keep up, while others are pushed up on elevators. Equitably funded schools run by knowledgeable educators, buttressed by strong local curriculums that center the entire context of students' lives will be the ones to improve the academic capabilities of America's most economically struggling children. Bye, guys. Bye. Okay. They demand multiple solutions, deep investment, and political support. Okay. Lena, all children are capable of learning, but we cannot expect all students to respond to that as the others. When far too many are hurt by stairwells with broken handrails and missing steps, tripping and falling as they struggle to keep up, while others are put up on elevators. Equitably funded schools run by I don't know what that word is, Elena. Educators buttressed by strong local, state, and national education laws that center the entire context of student lives will be the ones to improve academic standards in America's most economically levels children. They demand multiple solution, deep investment, and beliefs. Okay. Grayson, all children are capable of learning, but we cannot expect all students to excel when far too many are climbing stairwells with broken handrails and missing steps, tripping and falling as they fail to keep up with others, ascending up on elevators. Equitably funded schools run by worn-down educators, buttressed by strong local, state, and national education system that center the entire context of student lives will be the ones to improve the academic disadvantage of America's most economically disadvantaged students. They demand multiple solutions, deep investment, and political reformations. All right, Audrey. All children... That's all right, Grayson. That's all right. All children are capable of success, but we cannot expect all students to succeed when far too many are climbing up stairwells with broken handrails, missing steps, tripping as they struggle to keep up, while others are carried up on elevators. Equitably funded schools run by unjust educators, buttressed by strong local, state, and national education systems that center the entire context of student lives will be the ones to improve academic support for America's most economically struggling children. They demand multiple solutions, deep investment, and political justice for these kids. I don't get the center part, Audrey. You say equitably funded schools run by unjust educators. Oh, Murphy, you're fine. Oh, you saw a tail. It just wagged. So fluffy. Okay. So as the more of them come in, I want to pull this back down. So this is more of a... Oh, you meant to say just. Okay, great. All right, so this is what Whiting found when he did it with his 10th graders. Okay, sharply conflicting viewpoints emerged, and it became more obvious to the students that word choice matters. In the phrase, they blank to keep up while others are blanked up on elevator. Blanked up. Students discuss the difference between filling the first blank with struggled, tried, attempted. Okay. Students grasped that all three words conveyed a lack of effort or agency and expressed surprise when the original writer's actual words were revealed. They work to keep up, while others are zooming up on elevator. Right? The discrepancies were revelations to students, quote, many of whom had been classmates for years, who lived in similar neighborhoods and took multiple classes together. The importance of the use of language became apparent in a seemingly simple exercise, and they realized that their choice of words indicated subtle and even unconscious beliefs. Whiting writes, or Whiting. In addition to understanding their classmates' differing points of view, they also gain an important insight. Things that they thought were fact might actually be opinion. Whiting walked students through a few key sentences, dissecting how word choice could imply more than simple meaning. Students began to understand the subtleties of language, such as positive or negative connotation, the way a word might insinuate other meanings in text. They also explored how their own history, experience, and perspective might influence their word choice. Okay. Biggest benefit of the lesson is its replicability. The same people can do it over again with a different text and continue to learn about themselves, about how their unconscious and implicit biases affect their worldview, slowly stripping out ingrained habits of bias confirmation. Okay. So, where to take this next? Well, it's as the theme is for this course, understanding our biases is the first step to understanding our social interactions and what we do in those social interactions. So, if you want to understand your implicit biases, you first have to recognize them. And then if you want to make the change, that's what you do explicitly. Okay? If you want to reduce your biases around, or if you want to reduce the impact of your implicit biases, then my suggestion is to first start with recognizing it. Okay? And so where I'm going to go to now is what people were asking in their lecture questions in the discussion forums. That is prejudice taught? And there are a lot of resources that will indicate that yes, it is. I mean, a lot of times prejudice is replaced with hate in that question. So is hate taught? And the answer is most definitely yes. But there is a huge but here. While the vast majority of prejudice is taught, babies, infants, do have a bias for things that look like mom. Okay? For things that look like mom. And to a lesser degree, things that look like dad. Okay, so yeah, infants do express in the way that they do by staring, a preference for various physical attributes that are similar to their parents. Okay, and especially mom. So that reflects an innate feature about bias, and because humans are altricial animals, that means we require a lot of help when we're young, especially infants, because of our gigantic brain, because of our altricial nature. We require a lot of help, and we get that help from the people who are genetically associated with us, which are our parents and our siblings, right? So that comes from an evolutionary underpinning, source, foundation, right? So there are natural reasons for this preference bias, but the rest of it all is taught. Everything else is taught. So this is from the 1970s. It's a PSA about the 1970s, and it might be close to home, even though this was 40 some years ago. Okay.
Well, look, it's a known fact that they're different, right? They're lazy, you know.
Come on.
You just can't
Full
depend
screen.
on them. Well, as far as I'm concerned, they haven't been in civilization a long time, you know. But look, we have a very nice community here. I mean, we have a good church-going community, and we want to keep it that way. Look, anybody's welcome. I mean, if they're the right type. But I just don't want to hang around with them. I can't help it.
That's how I am. They look funny. I mean, not like us. And they pray funny, too. Those others, well, they don't dress well, and they throw garbage everywhere. Then they try to be your friend.
The subtle poison of prejudice passed almost innocently from parent to child. We have statistics on polio, but not on the number of children crippled by prejudice, a disease where parents are one of the main sources of infection. No antibiotic can cure hatred. You can. Don't infect your children with prejudice.
Ask my father. He'll tell you what's really true.
So that was from the Anti-Defamation League, and it was from the major synagogue back in the 1970s. And I also found this one. Let's see if this one sounds better than the one that I found. Yeah, it does.
Jimmy said I was prejudiced.
Do you know what prejudice is?
No.
Well, prejudice is when you react to someone because of their religion or their color.
But I don't do that.
Who is Jimmy?
Jimmy's one of my Jewish friends.
Then you are prejudiced because you think of Jimmy as your Jewish friend and not your friend.
Yo, that grandpa was savage. Then you are prejudiced. Savage grandpa. Okay, so there's and there's a few more. That was also from the 1970s, by the way. That was also from the at a full screen here. So there's that one. Close that. And then this is from a movie in 1988. Frances McDormand and Gene Hackman. It's called Mississippi Burning. It's a South and race related film. All right. Any feedback that you have from me, please let me know in chat before I show the next video. And while you're doing that, there was a question: why do we hate a certain group of people based on a very few? Like, why is that something that sounds logical to us? Well, I'll tell you, it is not logical. and nobody ever said it was logical. But it's potentially rational depending on your definition of rationality. And I want to separate what is rational versus what is logical. Okay. So it's not logical to hate a group or a person based on their group membership. It's not logical. That has nothing to do with logic. But to a particular person, it might be rational if you take the definition of rationality to do things to achieve one's goals. And so if you hate people to achieve your goals, well, then that's a rational behavior for you. I'm not saying it has anything to do with morality. That the morality and the ethics of it are 100% different questions. And to some, if hating somebody else based on their group membership is not achieving goals, well, then they'll consider that irrational. Okay, and we operate in rational and irrational modes all the time. Also, I want to separate emotional from irrational too. Just because you are operating with for emotional reasons doesn't mean you are operating irrationally. Okay. Yeah, so I couldn't understand really much of anything in the back room of the Mississippi burning clip. I think she was saying that her husband was one of the drivers. You have to that part is according to the movie. What I really wanted you to recognize was what she was saying when she had a tight close-up of her face. Okay. Audrey, the Mississippi burning clip was saying that hatred is taught from a young age. It's not something that you're born with. From a young age, I'm trying to paraphrase her dialogue here. That segregation is appropriate. That it's in the Bible, and then she drops a Genesis chapter and verse. And then she's like, from 7 years old, you hear it enough, you will believe it. Okay, so we've got religion playing a role here according to this screenwriter. We have, and everything about the Bible is taught, right? Everything about Christianity is taught, including Judaism, because the Old Testament is the Torah. So that's what she's trying to say there. You hear it enough, you start to believe it. That's called the propaganda effect. You hear something enough, regardless of its truth value, you will believe it. Okay, so remember, I think I said this during the first week. Beliefs are something you hold to be true, regardless of their factual status. Okay, regardless of their factual status. So propaganda affects by hitting you over the head with something until you believe it, and then you start repeating it yourself. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you though, Audrey. These things should be played on TV right now, but unfortunately, people don't watch TV. So let's make YouTube ads that have it, right. Let's add some 21st century stuff to it, shall we? Let's do that. Any other thoughts on these videos? They're very, any thoughts on Savage Grandpa calling his grandson a prejudiced little boy? Well, then you are prejudiced. Dummy. Stop it. It just ends on him saying, well, if you weren't prejudiced, you'd just be your friend. Right? So don't go around walking around saying, like, I've got this friend and I've got that friend, where this and that are groups of people. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. You don't get cred from that. You don't get any sort of cred. That. I want to take the moment right now for you all to just put in chat what you're thinking right now, how you're feeling, what you're doing with all of this information, how you plan to go forth from yesterday's information, today's chat, tomorrow's chat. Where are you right now? Sophia, I feel like they were straight to the... If they were aired today. Yeah. Let's give it a shot, shall we? Don't think. I'm curious if you recognized who they were talking about in the first one, the father and the son. If you recognize who they're talking about. Like, where are we? These are difficult conversations, right? These are tough conversations. So, how we feeling? How we doing? Are you tired of talking about it? Are you eager to keep doing more of it? Ready to get your hands dirty, so to speak, figure of speech. How are we? Oh, we'll say coping right now. How are we doing? Come on, chat. You can do this. Come on, chat. I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe. Let me go. Great. Grayson, I feel like it's a heated topic and it's impossible to talk about differences of other groups without being labeled a racist or prejudiced or discriminatory. Well, being labeled discriminatory is based on your actions. So if you're not doing anything discriminatory, then being called a discriminator would be in bad faith. Rachel, definitely not tired talking about it, but I'm trying to absorb as much as I can, because especially racial prejudice doesn't happen to me as much as it does for others from other races. Yeah. For sure. AJ, not tired of talking about it. I feel it needs to be talked about in order to bring light and change. Racial prejudice happens between a lot of groups. It sure does, AJ. It sure does. not just between black folks and white folks, but there are lots of. I have many Latinx friends have their own reckoning to deal with when it comes to black prejudice as well. If we're just focusing on race, of course. And yeah, so there's that. All right, anybody else have some thoughts on where they're at right now, what they feel right now with this information, what they're gonna plan, what they're doing, how they're feeling with the current events right now, all of that. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Don't be the shy guy. And while you're tip tap typing in chat here, oh, I realize I don't have any backing music. Gotta have those. I gotta have that backing. Oh, actually, before I start that, Sophia says I'm just tired in general, but I'm in the same boat as just here absorbing and listening since I'm not personally affected. Okay. Nick Cannon's video, not I don't. The one where he's asking for ownership. Yeah. Wild and out. Racial justice still goes on today, and change needs to occur. From Elena. Very nice. Okay. Flibbity gibbets. All right, we're gonna take a break, and you guys can keep writing in chat if you are there. Please come on back at 10:10 Central Time. So it's a little bit more than 5 minutes, but 10ish, because there's a little bit of delay. 10:10. But Aaliyah says, before I jump into BRB mode here, not tired of talking about it. It's almost required to keep talking about it to make a change. All right. BRB, everyone. Alrighty. So I just want to continue the conversation that we were having, so let's just go and back to this. Okay, dokie. Alright. So I'm going to play this next video about the science of racism. And then we will shift to a... I think, a broader discussion, because I think we can talk a little bit more than just about racism. We can talk about sexism and things like that. So we'll move on from there and pick back up on the racism tomorrow when we talk about discrimination, because that is part of it. So let's jump here. Let's turn off the Awoken Dream here. Reload this page. For some reason, only the...
real. And it can not only cause psychological pain, but also physiological damage to those who experience it.
So today we're going to look at the science of race.
Let's start over. Racism. Those were the three actors, by the way. Presenters, actors. Ray McKesson, Danielle Brooks, and Kid Fury. Thoughts. Thoughts on thoughts. Let's go! We can do it. We can do it. I mentioned the very important point of what racism is, or what they mentioned what racism is. Racism is a system of power. Okay, it's power. It has not. It really has little to do with race itself, more so than power races have in a given society. Rachel, I find it sad that we have to show scientific evidence that racism is happening. Yeah, that's a fair point. Oh. Okay. Sorry. We have an electrician here who's going to take a look at a light fixture for us. So, Astrid, let him know. Sorry. Alrighty. What else? What else do we want? What else are we saying? Thoughts. More thoughts. Elena, I love the video and taught me a lot that I never knew. I've been impacted by racial bias, but the health factors really shocked me. Oh yeah, it's deeply ingrained. It is a deep. And of course it's going to be deeply ingrained when you're talking about 400 years of... Audrey, I think that the way that they brought science and social points together really points interesting things I've heard before. Okay. Unique New York. Yeah, it makes me sad as a scientist that you haven't heard these points. Because in a science-forward society, this would be just information that everyone knows. But I guess that's my job, right? Is to now create a group of people that think science-forward. Sophia says, I just wish people with racial prejudice would watch videos like that and not try to refuse the information and instead actually listen and realize that their racist views are wrong. Okay. What? Nope, ladder's right there. All right, AJ, I find it crazy that your brain can be rewired to change your pride. Well, as a brain scientist myself, I do have to smooth that language over a little bit. It's a little simplistic to say that your brain rewires itself. It kind of does, but it's less. It happens less often in adults. What they're trying to say is that you can learn, which I've been saying over and over again, right? You can learn to unlearn your existing prejudices and biases. You can learn, and that learning is what they're saying is what is being rewired. And so they use some fancier terms than I think they should have, but I mean the underlying point is still the same. Okay, so keep that in mind. Keep going though. These are great. Keep going. I want to see more. 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 Give me more. So in terms of racial bias and racism, the race in power in a given society cannot experience racism. They cannot experience racism. They can experience racial prejudice, but they can't experience they can't experience racism. So a person could say of a different race, I hate white people. That would and that would be a racial prejudice. White people smell bad. And that would be a feature of racial prejudice, but white people cannot experience racism, okay? Because it is based on power, not essentially race itself, okay? It's race plus society, race plus power, okay? Your book, I think, talked about social dominance orientation a little bit, maybe things like that, right? And then various correlations with authoritarianism. It's Grayson, it's not semantics. It is the definition of racism. It is denotation of racism. Because you could use that argument for anything in the dictionary, right? How about oranges? Oranges. Is that just semantics? See why that is problematic, right? But we're talking about it from a psychological perspective, Grayson. We're not talking about it from the basic definition of racism. Okay. And power words in that definition that you found are words like inferior and superior. Okay, that's power. Okay. So it does say stuff about power. Back on. I welcome other thoughts on this too, so keep them coming. Keep the chat up. You don't need to just respond to me, respond to others too. can do it. We can do it. We can chat about these difficult topics. Yeah. White screen. Oh, jeez. Ah! Alright. Bitrate drop like crazy. Yeah, Grayson, that would be racial prejudice and not racism. It has nothing to do with racism. And I would chalk that up, and this is just my personal opinion. Those of you can agree, the rest of you can agree or disagree with Nick Cannon, but in my personal opinion, I would say Nick Cannon's very angry. And he lashed out. Called people some names, called a group of people some names, right? Anyone can do that. But if he truly believes what he said, then I would say that, yeah, maybe Nick Cannon is prejudiced against white people. Okay. And I could say that hate is wrong on all fronts. Hate is wrong on all fronts. So, yeah. But I encourage everyone who is thinking about this, I encourage everyone to focus less on individual people and what they have to say, and spend more time consuming stuff about broad experiences, because I think you will find a difference. And it's a more elucidating difference in experience. Okay, the experience of one person versus the experience of many people. And I encourage you all to put your own experiences aside in order to empathize, or at least attempt to empathize. Again, I'm going to always go back to empathy here, to at least try to empathize with others. Of course, if we're talking about race, and I'm white, I'm not black, I'm not going to be able to fully understand the experience of a black person in the United States, but I at least can try. And then if I talk to, another black person, and then a third black person, and then a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth, and a seventh, and an eighth, and a ninth, and then so on and so forth, to N black people, and if the same themes are coming up over and over and over again, even if there are some opposite outliers in that N black person bunch, if the vast majority experience similar things, similar attitudes, then I have to say, well, okay, I'm gonna have to discount these like 3 or 5 people who experience the opposite and really listen to the majority tell me what's up. Okay, so that's how you bridge that divide. Okay, that's how you bridge that divide. You at least attempt to empathize. Okay. And if you focus on individualism, and if you focus on individual aspects, Nick Cannon, for example, and you think, oh, the United States is an individualistic society, everyone's on their own, and the book defines that as ambivalently racist, it is because you are participating in the structures that perpetuate racism. Okay, because if you're just going to take a step back and be like, I'm not going to participate in this debate, you are participating in the structure that already exists as far as racism is concerned. So that's why there's a term in the book associated with just like ambivalent sexism. Ambivalent racism is participating in structures that already exist in our world. Okay. So we have about a half hour left, and I wanted to address other prejudices, because I don't see any other chat stuff coming in about the video here. God, I had this one up. Okay, come on, load it up. Let's go. So I'm gonna link this one to you all. It's also from Greater Good at Berkeley. I'm also going to link this one, and it is 3 tabs, as you can see. 3 tabs. Why are we divided? Why bridge differences? How to bridge. We'll talk a little bit more about this one tomorrow, I think. So I'm gonna also throw it in to the mix for tomorrow. We did that word game. Okay, and then this is the thingy. But there was a question. Oh, since I don't have anything else there, this is a question that came through. What other prejudices exist besides racism and sexism? So we've got a lot. So the next one that we can talk about is heterosexism. Okay, what is heterosexism? Somebody in chat, let me know what heterosexism is. On with the chat, or Grayson, that's a good attempt. The last part is actually not required of it. Heterosexism's opposite is homophobia. Kind of. So heterosexism is these were good attempts. You have obviously the right, or the right thrust of where the two of you are coming from and where others might be thinking. So heterosexism is the general societal position that heterosexual relationships or straight relationships and heterosexual orientation, sexual orientation, is the default. And so life is experienced by way of heterosexual couples. Okay, so we have gendered words like man and like husband and wife, or man and wife. We have wedding industries that primarily cater to female married participants. the default when talking about a relationship is that it's a male and female. We make assumptions about how partners are partnered, right? So even when a heterosexual person says, "Oh, my partner," we still make assumptions about that. It's like, oh, are they heterosexual or are they something else? Are they gay? Something like that. So, so that would be what heterosexism is. Heterosexism. Okay. So the default is straight couples. Okay. So that is prejudice. And so having negative attitudes that are outside of heterosexism would be things like homophobia, as Sophia suggested. Okay, the next one that I have is ableism. What is ableism? Excuse me. Yep, prejudice toward people with disabilities, for sure. Yep, that's exactly it, Sophia. That is exactly it. So, ableism would be the general default of the world is built for people with 100% of their physical faculties and 100% of their mental faculties. So, anything outside of that is considered abnormal and less than good. Okay. What else did I want to say about that? So, one of the major laws in the United States is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires places to have disabled access. So things like elevators for wheelchairs, that sort of thing. But then this also extends to learning difficulties. So the ADA covers learning difficulties and learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities that people have, which would prevent them from participating fully in society if that didn't exist. That's why the ADA exists, is because folks, handy-capable folks, essentially lobbied Congress to allow them to experience society more fully. And so, yeah, the ADA covers a lot of stuff. All right, we have another one. The next one that I have for you is cisgenderism. It could just be phrased as genderism too. So, what would that be? This is relatively. I mean, it's not new. I suppose coined relatively. What would that one be? Yeah, Audrey. And so how would you, what would you define as what cisgender is? For those who don't know, for those who might not be aware of what that is. And if you can hear that thumping above me, you hear like a deep thump, 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 thump at any point, my kid's friend came by, so. Grayson, man or woman? It's a little bit more than that. It's somebody who is, who identifies as a man, and that is, yeah, there you go. That's what Sophia has, is the gender associated with your sex. So the prejudice toward people who don't identify as cisgender could be for against non-binary folks, as well as trans folks. Okay. So that one exists. Okay. And then if it's not clear as we go through this, these prejudices, these isms, all have discriminations associated with them. Okay. I'll have, I'm gonna need, that hurts my ears. So I have another one for you. This one's pretty clear. Ageism. 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 Discriminant base because of your age. Discriminant of older people. Yeah, I like Grayson is closer to the definition of ageism. So it's, but let's be clear that it is prejudice of older people, and then the behaviors of you acting on your prejudice would be the discrimination. So I want to separate those two, because you can be ageist and potentially not discriminate against elderly individuals. So I want to make that, yeah. So yeah, it is prejudice. Yeah, it is specifically older people. Yep, Sophia, it is specifically older people. There's always, generally speaking, with these isms are a target group, and I know old is really, really nebulous. Like, how old? Before, you know, people are ageist, but it be that as it may, like any old folks, so it would change from person to person. So any old folks, but it is prejudice toward the elderly. Ageism. Can anyone else think of any of any ones that I haven't identified? Any ones that I haven't identified? Yeah, you can definitely hear that. while you're trying to come up with other ones, there was a question about physical microaggressions, and the answer is yes. These are all rooted in implicit biases. The example that was given, avoid walking near a black person on the street, that would be an example of a physical microaggression. Yeah, for sure. Generally speaking, microaggressions are verbal and verbalized, and intention is always maybe not always. Intention is usually positive from the perspective of the speaker, but it is always negative from the perspective of the receiver, based on that fusion animation that I shared with you in the lecture video. Okay. And then the follow-up question would be, why do people use them? Why do people use microaggressions? Well, because a lot of people just don't know any better. A lot of people just don't know any better. And so they're just going based on what they've learned. And that's generally speaking what happens, is you say something with good intentions that gets interpreted it gets interpreted in a different way, and we can separate intent from impact when it comes to those kinds of things. So microaggressions, generally speaking, from the verbalizer will come from good intentions, but the impact from the perceiver is negative. And so if the impact is negative from the perceiver, then don't say it as the speaker. Don't say it, regardless of what your intentions are. Okay. So that would be what I would answer to those two questions. And then, how do we get around ambivalent sexism? I know we didn't talk about sexism a lot, but it is still quite rampant in the United States, considering that we have never had a female president before, and quite a bit, right? And we ask questions of female candidates for any kind of office, different questions than we ask male candidates. And so how do we get around ambivalent sexism? Well, we have to recognize our biases, as I've said multiple times, right? We have to recognize that we have these biases, and we have to recognize that we are asking different questions, for example, of women versus men who are running for political office. Whatever that political office might be, we have to recognize our biases. We have to recognize that chivalry actually is harmful to 100% equitable status of women to men in society, because what we're saying as men acting chivalrously is that women, rather than men, need this support because they are fragile. And that is because they are fragile. You can't just be nice to all people, because chivalry is focusing specifically on the fact that on the belief that women need extra support. And that's coming from good intentions, negative impact, right? The intention versus impact. Okay. So, and then of course the hostile part of ambivalent sexism is obviously something to really get rid of. So how do we get around? So going back to the question, how do we get around ambivalent sexism? Well, you have to first recognize that you are making potentially sexist remarks, or engaging in sexist behaviors. Recognizing the bias is important, right? And then saying, okay, would I say... This is where the prefrontal cortex and the whole rewiring thing from the video really comes to the fore. Because if we say to ourselves, if we say to ourselves, would I say this to a man when I'm speaking to a woman? Prefrontal cortex, you gotta engage that reflection of what you're doing in order to stop doing those biases. AJ, there are some men that are fragile, if not more than women, so... Indeed, I mean, it takes all kinds, is really what it comes down to, right? We want to celebrate our differences, not say, oh, we're all the same. We're all the same, because, yeah, generalizations get us into lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of trouble, because that's what stereotypes are. They're generalizations, right? Are you one of those men, AJ? Are you fragile? Just kidding. Kidding. It's okay to be emotional, by the way. It's okay to cry. It's okay to bear your feelings to other men as well. When's the last time you had a good cry in front of a man? It's been a while for me, just because I don't see lots of people. I don't engage with men that much these days. The only man I really talk to is my son. And he's a boy. But he's seen me cry. So that's how we get around ambivalent sexism. We have to recognize, just like with racism, we have to recognize and attempt to come at it from a different perspective. Any other thoughts? I've attempted to answer the vast majority of questions that came across my face. Any other thoughts? Anything that you want me to hit up on tomorrow as far as discrimination is concerned? I'm open to it. Put those in your discussion questions. Make sure you're getting those in. I'm seeing a drop-off on that. Week 3, not a good idea of the course. Week 3, don't start dropping off on some of your responsibilities. Yeah. So. And remember, I am available on Zoom afterward for office hours. I will keep repeating that. So if you do need extra help, if you do want to explore some of the material a little bit more in depth, that is what I am here for. So please take advantage of that. And apologies for the thumping that's happening above if they're coming through, hurting your ears a little. But yeah. I'm just gonna pause here for a sec just to see if chat catches up to where I am. Bum 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 bum. I'm gonna put a couple of links in chat that I think might be cool. Quotes. So there's understandingprejudice.org. There's tolerance.org. That in there. If you want to watch something a little bit funnier with some language, you can get a 2016 clip a segment from The Daily Show with Ronnie Chang replying to the O'Reilly Factor segment in Chinatown. So, yeah. Give that a shot. It is kind of funny, but there is language. So, just be aware of that. What else? I think that's it for now. So I'm going to end the stream there. So if there's anything that I see come in next minute or so, but everyone have a good day. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for chatting. Enjoy yourselves. Have a good afternoon. Hopefully don't get rained on. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow, same time, same place. Discrimination and a little bit of reducing prejudice. So we'll talk about contact and cooperation. Bye, everybody.